A wealthy chief smiled warmly at his hungry servant, promising prosperity while secretly drinking from the well of his dreams. Then he spoke words that would break the ancient covenant. Gather close, children of the red earth and endless sky. Come to this fire where truth dances with shadows, for what I am about to share has been whispered beneath baobab trees for generations, passed down like precious beads from elder to child. The man who sits above you in that carved chair, speaking of family and loyalty, he carries a secret so ancient, so perfectly hidden, that it has kept countless souls trapped in cages made of their own gratitude, not for gold, not for glory, but simply to keep them thankful for their chains. What happened next would shatter the sacred bond that holds the entire village together. Some secrets are buried deeper than the roots of the Iroko tree. But this one claws its way through soil and stone, demanding to be heard. The world of work breathes differently when you know what the ancestors knew. Every handshake becomes a spider's web. Every "we honor you" becomes a trap closing softly. Every promise of tomorrow becomes another weight upon your shoulders. Your chief sits in silence now, his face clouded like the sky before the rains, knowing that his greatest weapon, your trust, is about to be stripped away like bark from a fever tree. But are you ready for the truth that will set the village on fire? Listen well, for this is how it began. Kwame was different from the others, not in the way that makes mothers whisper prayers or fathers sharpen their concern, but different like the baobab is different from the palm tree. Ancient wisdom growing in modern earth. The morning the secret showed itself to him, the great city of Lagos hummed its eternal song. Traffic flowed like blood through the arteries of a giant. Traders called their wares in voices that carried the rhythm of the ancestors, and somewhere in a tower of glass and steel that scraped the belly of the sky, Kwame sat in his small space, unaware that the very foundations of his world were about to crack like drought-hardened earth. His master, Chief Adebayo, was everything a chief should be, or so the mask proclaimed. Cloth that whispered of success, a handshake that spoke of strength, and words that painted pictures of advancement and shared prosperity. For 3 harvests, Kwame had believed in these painted visions the way children believe the moon follows them home. But that morning, the mask began to slip like clay in the rains. It started with paper, a single leaf that had blown to the wrong tree. Paper, that humble messenger of truth, has always been the revealer of secrets. Our fathers knew this when they carved wisdom into bark and pressed it into the memory of stone. The paper bore the mark of power, official as a chief's staff. But its words? They spoke truths that made Kwame's blood run both cold and hot, like the moment when fever breaks and clarity floods the body. Worker Keeping Ways, Season 3 Planning. Advice: keep current workers at 7 parts of 10 below fair payment. Mind-binding ways show workers value family words over silver coins. Continue moon cycle honor gatherings to strengthen heart bonds while keeping coin purses light. Kwame read the words once, twice, 3 times, like counting the beats of a drum that suddenly plays a rhythm never heard before in any village. The paper trembled in his hands, or perhaps his hands trembled around the paper. Sometimes, when truth reveals itself, it is hard to tell who shakes whom. The words burned into his mind like brands, mind-binding ways, heart bonds while keeping coin purses light. This was not mere cheating. This was something older, more dangerous. This was the turning of love into chains, of loyalty into slavery, of the very bonds that held communities together into weapons against the people themselves. You know how it is when you see one thread pulled from a cloth, and suddenly you notice all the other loose threads dancing in the wind? That is what happened to Kwame in the days that followed. The world of work around him transformed from a landscape of opportunity into a carefully woven trap of the mind and heart. The family gatherings that Chief Adebayo held each moon? Kwame now saw them for what they truly were. Rituals designed to bind the workers' spirits while keeping their bodies weak with hunger. The very language was a web. We are not just workers, we are family. But family does not systematically starve family. Family does not calculate the precise spiritual pressure needed to keep family members grateful for crumbs. We honor your dedication, Chief Adebayo would say, his smile polished like a ceremonial mask. In these difficult times, we are blessed to have each other. Difficult times, blessed to have each other. The words now rang in Kwame's ears like coins dropping into a beggar's bowl, metallic, hollow, designed to make the giver feel generous while keeping the receiver dependent. But the secret was deeper than simple theft of wages. Oh, much deeper than a thief in the night stealing grain? Kwame began to watch with the eyes of the hunter, to listen with the ears of the forest, to see the patterns that had always been there, waiting for vision clear enough to perceive them. He noticed how Chief Adebayo would share just enough of his own pain. A sick mother, a daughter's school needs, creating the illusion of shared vulnerability while never actually being vulnerable. How he would praise individuals when alone but never lift them up before the group. How he would create small quarrels between workers, then position himself as the wise peacemaker. Divide and rule, whispered the voice of his grandfather in his memory. The oldest trick in the lion's book. Make the antelope fight each other, and they forget about the lion watching from the grass. The secret was becoming clear, like water settling in a calabash. Chief Adebayo did not want strong, independent workers. He wanted grateful ones. He did not want people who knew their worth. He wanted people who felt lucky to have anything at all. 3 weeks after the paper revealed its secrets, Kwame sat with his sister friend Aduni during the time of midday eating. Aduni had been with the company for 7 seasons. 7 seasons of devotion that would make the most faithful wife weep with recognition. I have been thinking about seeking work in another place, Kwame said carefully, testing the waters like a fisherman checking his nets. Aduni's reaction was swift as lightning and deep as thunder. Her eyes widened with something between shock and betrayal. But, Kwame, Chief Adebayo has been like a father to us. Remember when your sister was sick with fever? He himself approved your time away. And the year-end celebration, you saw how much they spent on our joy. Time away that was his by right according to the law. A celebration that cost less than 1 moon's payment of what they truly deserved. But Aduni spoke of these things like sacred gifts from a benevolent ancestor. Kwame saw it then. The true secret that Chief Adebayo and chiefs like him across all the lands guard more jealously than a mother leopard guards her cubs. They do not want your success. They want your gratitude. Success makes workers strong like trees with deep roots. Gratitude makes them bend like grass in the wind. Success gives people choices. Gratitude makes them stay. The system was not designed to underpay people despite their loyalty. It was designed to underpay them because of their loyalty. The very qualities that made them good people, trust, dedication, appreciation, were being turned into weapons against their own prosperity. It was beautiful in its cruelty, like a poisonous flower or the hypnotic dance of the cobra before it strikes. This was not just theft of money. This was theft of spirit. This was the ancient evil that the griots warned about in their songs, the turning of virtue into vice, of strength into weakness, of the bonds of community into the chains of slavery. That night, sleep fled from Kwame like birds before a storm. He walked to his small balcony and looked out over the city lights. Thousands of windows, each containing someone who might be trapped in their own web of gratitude. His talking box buzzed like an angry bee. Words from Chief Adebayo appeared like spirits in the darkness. Kwame, I know the moon is high, but I wanted you to know how much I value your hard work on the Morrison matter. Workers like you are why this company is a family. Sleep well, my brother. 6 moons ago, those words would have filled Kwame with warmth and pride like a successful hunter returning to the village. Tonight, they felt like watching a master craftsman at work, admirable in skill, terrifying in purpose. My brother. The word stuck like honey in a trap. Kwame thought of his grandfather, who used to tell him stories about the old days when a person's worth was measured by their gift to the community, not their willingness to be grateful for less than the spirits intended. Child, his grandfather would say, his voice like wind through ancient leaves, beware of the one who makes you feel special for accepting what should be as natural as rain. The lion who tells the antelope it is lucky to be chosen for dinner is still planning to feast on the antelope's flesh. 8. The gratitude trap was everywhere, Kwame realized, with the clarity that comes only in the deep of night. It was not just in places of work, it was in marriages where one person gave little while expecting endless thanks. It was in governments that provided basic needs while demanding eternal appreciation. It was in any place where power imbalance was maintained through the manipulation of the heart. But seeing the trap was only like spotting the first crack in the calabash. Getting out, that was like climbing from a pit while the walls crumble beneath your hands. The next morning brought a test like fire tests gold. Chief Adebayo called Kwame into his inner chamber, that sanctuary of polished wood and inspiring words that now seemed like a spider's web, decorated with beautiful flowers to lure the unwary. Kwame, sit. Palm wine? The ritual of welcome, offered by one who was systematically stealing the very life from him. Kwame accepted the cup and watched Chief Adebayo's performance with eyes newly opened to see the dance behind the dance. I have been watching you, my brother. Your work spirit, your heart, beyond praise. I am considering you for a special task. More responsibility, of course. It will not come with immediate payment adjustment. These things take time like a tree growing, you understand. But the experience will be worth more than silver. More responsibility. No immediate payment adjustment. The experience will be worth more than silver. It was like watching a storyteller whose tales you had learned by heart. You could see every gesture, every pause, every moment when the audience was supposed to look away from what truly mattered. I am honored that you consider me, Kwame heard himself say, the words feeling like stones in his mouth. Chief Adebayo's face shone like the morning sun. I knew you would understand. That is what I treasure about you, Kwame. You see the bigger picture. You understand that we are building something greater than mere coin counting here. Something greater than coin counting. Like saying a house is greater than its foundation while refusing to lay proper stones. That afternoon, Kwame made a decision that would change the course of many rivers. He began to remember everything. Every conversation, every opportunity that came without proper payment, every moment when appreciation was offered instead of appropriate reward. But remembering was not enough. The secret demanded action like a seed demands planting. Change, like wildfire, spreads in ways that surprise even the wind. What Kwame thought would be a single person's journey toward truth became something larger, more dangerous, more necessary than a single tree seeking light. It began when he shared his vision with Aduni, not as accusations flying like angry hornets, but as questions offered like water to the thirsty. Have you ever counted what we are truly worth to the chief's house? He asked over the midday meal one day. What do you mean, brother? The Morrison work you completed when the last moon was full. How much wealth did it bring to the house? Aduni paused, her spoon halfway to her lips like a bird uncertain of its perch. About 2 million calories, I think. Why do you ask? And your payment is what? 300,000 for the full year? Kwame, that is not how the world of trade works. There are costs, the building, the tools, the... Of course, sister, but even accounting for all those costs, do you think the one who brought 2 million calories of wealth might be worth more than 300,000 in payment? Seeds, once planted in fertile soil, have a way of growing even when the farmer is not watching. Over the following weeks, Kwame watched as Aduni began to ask her own questions, to see patterns she had previously walked past like a blind person ignoring obvious paths. Then Tunde from the counting house started asking questions. Then Bisi from the message-spreading work. Then others like ripples spreading across a still pond when a stone breaks the surface. The secret was spreading like fire through dry grass, and with it, a dangerous thing. People were beginning to value themselves as the ancestors intended, fully, completely, without apology. But before we speak of Chief Adebayo's response, let us pause, children of the soil, and speak of how change moves through a community like wind through the branches of the ancient silk cotton tree. For change is not like the sudden crack of lightning that splits the sky in one brilliant moment. No, change is like the gradual wearing away of stone by water, drop by drop, day by day, until one morning the people wake to find that the very landscape has been transformed. In the offices of that glass tower, something was stirring that had not stirred for many seasons. Workers who had once moved through their days like sleepwalkers were beginning to open their eyes. Conversations that had once been about the weather and family now carried undercurrents of deeper questions. Have you noticed, Funmi from the message-spreading work whispered to her desk neighbor, how Chief Adebayo always speaks of belt-tightening for us, but his clothes seem to grow finer each season? Have you seen, asked Amika from the planning group, how they speak of family loyalty when asking us to work late? But when we ask for time with our actual families, suddenly it becomes a business decision. These whispers spread like the call of the talking drum from village to village, carrying messages that could not be stopped by walls or hierarchies or corporate policies. Kwame watched this awakening with the mixed feelings of a man who has lit a fire. Pride in the warmth it brings, concern about where the flames might spread. For he understood, as his grandfather had taught him, that once people taste freedom, they can never again be satisfied with chains, no matter how golden those chains might appear. In the counting house, Tunda began to notice things that had always been there but never seen. The way Chief Adebayo would arrive each morning in a different fine cloth, speaking of difficult times while his wrist carried a timepiece worth more than 3 workers' yearly wages. The way he would speak passionately about the company family, while his own children attended schools that cost more than most families earned. My brothers and sisters, Tunda said one day during the midday eating time, I have been thinking about something that troubles my spirit. The others gathered around him like villagers around a storyteller, sensing that important words were about to be spoken. We speak always of this workplace as family. But tell me, in your true family, does the father eat meat while the children are given only bones? Does the mother wear fine cloth while her daughters go in rags? Does the head of the house speak of difficult times while living in abundance? The questions hung in the air like smoke from a sacred fire, impossible to ignore or unsee. BC, who had been quiet for many days, finally spoke. In my village, when I was young, there was a chief who spoke always of unity and shared suffering. He asked the people to give more crops, to work longer in the fields, to sacrifice for the good of all. But the people noticed that while they grew thinner, he grew fatter. While their children went without new clothes, his family wore the finest cloth from distant lands. What happened to this chief? Asked Aduni, though something in her voice suggested she already knew. The people stopped believing his words, BC said simply. And once people stop believing, a leader's power becomes like morning mist. It disappears when the sun of truth rises. Chief Adebayo was many things, but he was not a fool sleeping in the midday sun. He could sense the change in the workplace atmosphere like a skilled farmer sensing the approach of the rains by the behavior of the wind. But understanding the problem and knowing how to solve it were two different things, like knowing a storm is coming and knowing how to stop it. His first response was to tighten his web of control, like a spider feeling the vibrations of struggling prey and quickly moving to secure his catch. He called unexpected meetings where he spoke with increased passion about the challenging economic environment and how blessed they all were to have steady work. He shared more personal stories, his mother's illness requiring expensive treatment, his daughter's educational expenses, creating the impression that he too was struggling like them. But these stories, which had once created sympathy and connection, now sounded different to ears that had learned to listen with discernment. The workers began to notice that his struggling looked remarkably like prosperity, that his sacrifices seemed to leave him more comfortable than their dedication left them. My dear family, he said during one particularly emotional speech, I know these are difficult times for all of us, but we must remember that a tree with strong roots can weather any storm. Our roots are our loyalty to each other, our commitment to this shared mission. Kwame listened to these words with a strange feeling of watching a play he had seen many times before. The words were the same, the gestures were the same, but now he could see the actor behind the performance. Strong roots, he thought, but whose roots and in what soil? After the meeting, Chief Adebayo approached Kwame privately, his face wearing the expression of a concerned father. Kwame, my brother, I've been sensing some tension in the office lately, some negativity. I'm worried about the effect it might have on our family here. The words were carefully chosen like stones placed precisely in a foundation. Tension, negativity, effect on our family. Each word designed to make Kwame feel responsible for maintaining harmony rather than pursuing justice. I trust you understand the importance of maintaining a positive environment, Chief Adebayo continued. Sometimes when people start focusing too much on material concerns, they lose sight of the bigger picture, the relationships, the growth opportunities, the intangible benefits that make this place special. Material concerns. As if wanting fair payment for honest work was somehow base or unworthy. I understand, Chief, Kwame replied, his voice steady as a drumbeat. I believe everyone wants to contribute positively to our shared work. Exactly! Chief Adebayo's relief was visible. I knew you would see it correctly. Perhaps you could help me guide some of our colleagues toward a more positive perspective? And there it was, the invitation to become complicit in his own exploitation, to help maintain the very system that was stealing from him and his colleagues. I will think about what you have said, Kwame replied, neither agreeing nor refusing, leaving space for truth to grow. That evening, Kwame walked the streets of Lagos as the sun painted the sky in colors that reminded him of the village fires of his childhood. The city hummed around him, but his mind was traveling through time, connecting present patterns to ancient wisdom. He remembered a story his grandmother used to tell about a leopard who convinced a village that he had given up hunting meat and now survived only on fruits and leaves. The leopard spoke so convincingly of his transformation, shared so many stories of his peaceful new life that the villagers began to trust him. Slowly, the leopard became part of the community. He attended village meetings, offered advice on farming, even helped resolve disputes between neighbors. The villagers praised his wisdom and celebrated his presence among them, but one by one, small things began to disappear. A chicken here, a goat there. The leopard always had reasonable explanations. Predators from the forest, thieves from neighboring villages, simple misfortune. It was only when a child noticed that the leopard's teeth were never stained with fruit juice, only with what looked suspiciously like blood, that the truth became clear. The leopard had never changed his nature. He had simply learned to hunt more cleverly. Kwame realized that Chief Adebayo was like that leopard, not evil in the dramatic way of stories, but practicing a form of predation so subtle, so wrapped in care and concern, that the prey actually felt grateful to be consumed. The next morning brought a test that would reveal just how far Chief Adebayo was willing to go to maintain his control. Kwame arrived at work to find a new policy announcement waiting in his message box. Effective immediately, all salary discussions between employees are discouraged, as they may create unnecessary tension and negativity in our work-family environment. Questions about compensation should be directed to management through proper channels. The timing was not coincidental. This was a direct response to the conversations that had been spreading through the office like ripples in a pond. But the policy revealed something important. Chief Adebayo was afraid, and his fear showed that the workers had more power than they realized. Fear, Kwame's grandfather used to say, is like the shadow that reveals the true shape of things. And Chief Adebayo's new policy cast a shadow that revealed the true nature of their workplace relationship. The policy had the opposite effect of what was intended. Instead of stopping salary discussions, it made them more necessary, more urgent, more obviously justified. Why? Asked Funmi during a quiet moment in the corridor. Would discussing our own worth create tension unless someone benefits from us not knowing our worth? Why? Wondered Emeka. Are we discouraged from talking about the very thing we trade our days and years to receive? Thus. These questions spread through the office like the call of birds warning of an approaching storm. And with each question, more workers began to see the web that had been woven around them. Aduni, who had once been the most loyal defender of Chief Adebayo's paternal management style, now found herself questioning things she had never questioned before. Kwame, she said one day, I have been thinking about my sister's workplace. Her chief encourages the workers to discuss their compensation, says transparency builds trust. She earns almost twice what I earn for similar work, and her workplace has none of this tension about money that we seem to have here. What do you think that means? Kwame asked, though he already knew she was arriving at the same understanding he had reached. I think, Aduni said slowly, as if the words themselves were dangerous, that chiefs who have nothing to hide don't fear their workers talking freely. This was the moment Kwame had been waiting for. Not just individual awakening, but collective understanding beginning to emerge like dawn after a long night. But collective understanding, he knew, would bring collective resistance from those who profited from the current arrangement. It began innocently enough, a simple lunch gathering that grew beyond its original boundaries, like a stream that becomes a river during the rainy season. Kwame had invited Aduni and Tunde to share the midday meal and discuss what they had learned about their true worth to the company. But word traveled, as word does in communities where people hunger for truth. BC arrived, then Funmi, then Emeka. Others followed, workers from different departments who had been having their own quiet conversations about fairness and respect. What had been planned as a meal between friends became something larger, a gathering of people who had individually arrived at the same understanding and were now discovering they were not alone. My brothers and sisters, Kwame said, looking around at the faces gathered in the small restaurant. I think we all know why we are here, even if we did not plan it this way. Heads nodded like flowers in a gentle breeze. Everyone understood. We have all learned things about our worth, about fair payment, about the difference between true care and false care. But knowledge alone is like a seed that never meets soil. It cannot grow unless we act. What kind of action? Asked Tunde, though his voice suggested he was ready for whatever answer came. Honest action, Kwame replied. Speaking truth clearly, asking for what we deserve, refusing to pretend that gratitude is an adequate substitute for respect. Around the table, faces showed the complex emotions of people standing at the edge of a great change. Fear mixed with hope, uncertainty mixed with determination. But what if we lose our positions? Asked Funmi. What if Chief Adebayo decides we are troublemakers? It was Aduni who answered, her voice carrying a strength that surprised even herself. Sister, we are already losing. We lose a little of our worth every day we accept less than we deserve. We lose a little of our dignity every time we feel grateful for crumbs when we have earned a feast. The question is not whether we will lose something, but whether we will lose the right things or the wrong things. Besides, added Bissy with a smile that held both sadness and steel. Skilled workers are like water. We will find our proper level. But chiefs who cannot treat workers fairly are like broken vessels. They may struggle to hold water at all. The gathering ended with an agreement. They would approach Chief Adebayo together, united in their request for fair treatment. Not as adversaries seeking conflict, but as valuable contributors seeking respect. But they all understood that unity, while powerful, also made them visible in a way that individual complaints never could. They were no longer scattered voices that could be handled separately. They were becoming a chorus that would be much harder to silence. The evening before their planned meeting with Chief Adebayo, Kwame found himself unable to sleep. He stood on his balcony, looking out over the lights of Lagos, each window representing someone who might be facing their own version of this struggle between dignity and security. His phone buzzed with a message from Chief Adebayo, sent late into the night. Kwame, my brother, I hope you are well. I have been reflecting on our recent conversation and wanted you to know that I truly value your commitment to our work family. Perhaps we could meet privately tomorrow to discuss your future here. I have some ideas that might interest you. The message was perfectly crafted. Personal enough to feel special, vague enough to maintain mystery, timed to arrive when resistance might be weakened by fatigue and doubt. 6 months ago, such a message would have filled Kwame with excitement and anticipation. Tonight, it felt like watching a master fisherman cast his net, admiring the skill while understanding exactly what was being attempted. Kwame did not reply immediately. Instead, he called Adoni. Sister, I have received an interesting message from our chief. He wants to meet with me privately tomorrow before our group meeting. Adoni's understanding was immediate. He seeks to divide us like a hunter separating one antelope from the herd. Exactly. The question is how to respond. With truth, Adoni replied without hesitation. Tell him you prefer transparency, that discussions about the workplace should include all affected parties. If he truly cares about the work family, he should welcome the opportunity to address everyone's concerns together. Her wisdom impressed Kwame. You have learned well, sister. We all have, brother. The teacher was painful, but the lesson was necessary. Kwame composed his reply to Chief Adebayo. Thank you for reaching out, Chief. I believe the matters we need to discuss affect our entire work family, so I think it would be most appropriate to address them in tomorrow's planned group meeting. I look forward to a productive conversation where everyone can be heard. Sending that message felt like crossing a river. Once you step into the current, there is no choice but to continue to the other side. The morning of the great meeting came with the weight of destiny hanging in the air like morning mist that refuses to lift. The sun rose as it always had, but to those who knew what this day would bring, its light seemed different, sharper, more revealing, like the light that shows dust particles dancing in the air that had always been there but never seen. Kwame arrived at the office to find Chief Adebayo already there, his smile brighter than usual, his greeting warmer than the morning sun. But there was something in his eyes, a calculation, a measuring, like a merchant evaluating the worth of goods before setting a price. Ah, Kwame, my early bird brother, I was hoping to catch you before the others arrive. Here it was, the last attempt to separate, to divide, to handle the situation in pieces rather than as a whole. Chief, I am honored by your attention, but I believe our conversation should wait for the others. What affects one of us affects all of us? Is that not the foundation of family? Chief Adebayo's smile flickered for just a moment, like a candle flame touched by an unexpected breeze. Of course, I just thought... But yes, family should be together. As the morning progressed, the office filled with the usual sounds of work beginning. Keyboards clicking like rain on leaves, phones ringing like birds calling to each other, conversations flowing like streams finding their paths. But underneath the familiar rhythms, there was something else. An undercurrent of anticipation that touched everyone, even those who did not know exactly what was coming. At precisely noon, when the sun stood highest in the sky and shadows were shortest, 9 workers approached Chief Adebayo's office. Not as supplicants seeking favor, not as children approaching a parent, but as equals seeking recognition of their equality. Kwame knocked on the doorframe. Chief, we are ready for our conversation. The moment stretched like the pause between the drummer's lifted hand and the first beat. Chief Adebayo looked at the assembled group with an expression that cycled through surprise, concern, calculation, and finally settled on what appeared to be benevolent confusion. Of course, please come in, though I must say I'm a bit surprised by the formality of this gathering. They arranged themselves in Chief Adebayo's office like delegates at a peace conference, each person carrying their own piece of the truth they had collectively discovered. Kwame spoke first, his voice carrying the authority of one who has found his ground and stands firmly upon it. Chief, we have come to speak about our compensation. Ah. Chief Adebayo leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled like a bridge he was building in his mind. I see. Well, you know I always encourage open communication in our work family. We are grateful for that, Aduni said, her voice steady as drumbeat. We have done research into our worth, both to this company and in the broader market. We have calculated the value we bring and the compensation we receive. And we have found, Tunde continued, that there is a significant gap between what we contribute and what we are given in return. Chief Adebayo nodded slowly like a wise elder considering a complex problem. I appreciate your diligence in this matter, but you must understand, compensation is a complex thing. There are many factors: overhead costs, market conditions, the need to maintain stability during uncertain times. Chief, BC interrupted gently, we have accounted for overhead costs. We have researched market conditions. And what we have found is that even accounting for all reasonable expenses, our department generates approximately 3 times more revenue than we receive in total compensation. The silence that followed was profound as the moment before thunder. Chief Adebayo's mask of benevolent concern began to slip, revealing something harder underneath. I see you have been quite thorough, he said, his voice carrying a new edge. But I think you may be misunderstanding the nature of our relationship here. This company has been good to all of you. We have provided stability, opportunity, a family atmosphere that many companies cannot offer. And we are grateful for that, Kwame said carefully. But gratitude should not be a substitute for fairness. A family that truly cares for its members ensures they are treated justly. Justice? Chief Adebayo's eyebrows raised as if the word itself was unexpected. I think perhaps you have been influenced by outside perspectives that don't understand our unique culture here. Here it was. The attempt to make their reasonable requests seem foreign, unreasonable, imported from outside rather than arising from their own legitimate concerns. Funmi spoke for the first time. Chief, no outside perspective told us that we deserve fair compensation. Our own experience taught us that. Our own research showed us what fair compensation looks like. And our own worth, added Amika, demands that we ask for it. Chief Adebayo stood then, beginning to pace like a caged leopard. I'm disappointed, truly disappointed. I thought we had built something special here, something beyond mere transactional relationships. We have built something special, Kwame replied. We have built trust, respect, and mutual support. But those things should enhance fair compensation, not replace it. You're talking about this workplace like it's just another business, Chief Adebayo said, his voice carrying notes of hurt and betrayal. But we're family here. Family doesn't reduce everything to money. You are right, Aduni said quietly. Family doesn't reduce everything to money. But family also doesn't systematically underpay family members while telling them they should be grateful for the privilege. The words hung in the air like smoke that cannot be waved away. This was the moment when all pretense fell away, when the real nature of the relationship stood revealed like bones emerging from receding floodwaters. Chief Adebayo stopped pacing and looked directly at the group. For the first time in their memory, his expression was completely honest. No manufactured warmth, no false concern, just raw calculation. I see, he said slowly. So this is how it is. After everything I've done for each of you, this is how you choose to repay that kindness. Chief, Kwame said gently, requesting fair compensation is not unkindness. It is honesty. And, Tunde added, if you truly value us as you have said, this should be a conversation about how to make fair compensation happen, not whether we deserve it. What followed was 1 hour of the most intense workplace drama any of them had ever experienced. Chief Adebayo deployed every technique in his considerable arsenal, guilt that flowed like honey over poison, fear disguised as concern for their futures, bribes wrapped in the language of opportunity. He spoke of the company's financial constraints while sitting beneath a painting that cost more than any of their annual salaries. He reminded them of the good things they received while ignoring the basic things they were denied. He appealed to their loyalty while demonstrating none toward them. But something fundamental had changed. The secret was out, loose in the world like a bird that had learned to fly, and with it, the power it had held over them was broken, like a chain struck by the hammer of truth. Chief, Kwame said when the performance finally ended, we hear everything you are saying, but we are not here to negotiate whether we deserve fair pay. We know we do, as surely as we know the sun will rise tomorrow. We are here to discuss how that fair payment will happen. Because, Aduni added, workers who generate 3 million calories of value while receiving 1 million in compensation are not being treated fairly regardless of how many times you call them family. And, Bessie concluded, we have decided that we will no longer pretend otherwise. What happened next revealed the true nature of Chief Adebayo more clearly than years of careful observation ever could. When all his techniques of manipulation failed, when guilt and fear and false intimacy could no longer maintain control, the mask fell away completely. I see, he said, his voice now cold as morning air in the dry season. So this is how you choose to show gratitude. This is how you repay years of opportunity, of mentorship, of the family atmosphere I've worked so hard to create. The word gratitude fell between them like a stone into still water, creating ripples that revealed the true depth of the relationship. Chief, Kwame said carefully, we are grateful for many things, but we cannot be grateful for being systematically undervalued. Systematically undervalued? Chief Adebayo's laugh was sharp as a blade. You think you're undervalued? Do you know how many people would be grateful, truly grateful, for the opportunities you have here? And there it was, the threat hidden beneath layers of family talk and caring concern. Other people would be grateful. Translation, you are replaceable, and your replacements will accept less. Perhaps, Funmi said quietly, but those people would eventually learn what we have learned. Truth has a way of revealing itself. Truth? Chief Adebayo's voice rose like smoke from a fire fed by anger. The truth is that you have steady work, good benefits, opportunities for growth. The truth is that many companies would not have been as patient with your attitudes as I have been. The truth, Tunda replied with calm that was more powerful than anger, is that we have generated millions in revenue while receiving thousands in compensation. The truth is that you have built your own prosperity on our systematic underpayment. And the truth, Emeka added, is that you have used our loyalty and dedication as weapons against our own financial well-being. Chief Adebayo stood behind his desk now like a general whose battle plan had failed, his eyes moving from face to face, searching for the weakness that would allow him to regain control. I want you all to think very carefully about what you're doing here, he said, his voice carrying the weight of barely controlled anger. This company has invested in you. We have trained you, developed you, given you experience. Contracts can be reconsidered. References can be qualified. The business world is smaller than you think, and reputations matter. The threats were no longer veiled. This was the iron fist that had always existed within the velvet glove of family rhetoric. But instead of the fear he expected to see, Chief Adebayo found himself looking at faces that showed something he had not anticipated. Pity. Chief, Kwame said with genuine sadness in his voice, we hoped this conversation would end differently. We hoped, Aduni added, that you would see the justice in our request and work with us to create a truly fair workplace. Instead, Bessie concluded, you have shown us that all the family talk was simply a tool to keep us accepting less than we deserve. The meeting ended not with resolution, but with clarity. The workers filed out of Chief Adebayo's office with their request officially made and officially refused. But they also left with something more valuable than immediate success. They left with absolute certainty about the nature of their situation and the character of their chief. Outside the office, they gathered in a circle like villagers around a fire, each person understanding that they had crossed a river together and could never return to the other side. So, Kwame said quietly, now we know exactly where we stand. Yes, Aduni replied, and now we decide what to do with that knowledge. What followed was 3 weeks that would be remembered as the time when everything changed. Not just for those 9 workers, but for the entire office, the entire company, and ultimately for countless others who would hear this story and recognize their own struggles within it. Chief Adebayo's response was swift and predictable as a lion protecting its territory. He called individual meetings attempting to break their unity like a hunter separating prey. He brought in the rule keepers to speak of unrealistic expectations and market realities. He implied that continued negative attitudes might result in the need for organizational restructuring. But something remarkable happened. Instead of scattering like frightened birds, the group grew stronger. Other workers, watching the courage of the nine, began to ask their own questions, make their own calculations, demand their own answers. The accounting department discovered that executive bonuses for the previous year exceeded the entire salary budget for their floor. The marketing team found salary surveys showing they were 40 to 60% below market rate. The customer service group learned that their department's performance metrics were among the highest in the industry, while their compensation was among the lowest. Knowledge spread like fire through dry grass, and with knowledge came solidarity. Chief Adebayo tried every technique he had learned in years of managing through manipulation. He organized mandatory team-building exercises designed to rebuild family bonds. He shared more personal stories, attempting to recreate the emotional connections that had once kept workers grateful for inadequate compensation. He even brought in a consultant, a smooth-talking man in an expensive suit who spoke of managing expectations and maintaining workplace harmony, to conduct workshops on positive attitude and team loyalty. But the consultant's very presence revealed the desperation of Chief Adebayo's position. When you need to hire someone to convince your workers that they should be grateful for less than they deserve, you have already lost the moral foundation of your leadership. During one particularly tense all-hands meeting, Chief Adebayo stood before the assembled workers like a chief addressing a rebellious village. "I want to address some of the concerns that have been circulating recently," he said, his voice carrying forced authority. "There seems to be some confusion about compensation, some unrealistic expectations that may have been influenced by outside agitators who don't understand our unique culture here. Outside agitators, unrealistic expectations, unique culture." Each phrase was designed to make legitimate requests for fair treatment sound foreign, unreasonable, or disloyal. But the audience that listened to these words was not the same audience that had once absorbed them without question. These were workers who had learned to see the difference between explanation and manipulation, between leadership and exploitation. Kwame stood up in the back of the room. "Chief, may I ask a question?" Chief Adebayo's smile was tight as a drumskin. "Of course, Kwame. You speak of outside agitators and unrealistic expectations. But our research came from public salary surveys, industry reports, and our own company's financial documents. Are you suggesting that publicly available information about fair compensation is somehow inappropriate for us to consider?" The question hung in the air like smoke that cannot be waved away. Chief Adebayo's pause lasted a moment too long, his hesitation visible to everyone in the room. "Well, of course you're free to research, Kwame. But research without context can be misleading. Our compensation structure reflects many factors that simple salary surveys cannot capture. Could you help us understand those factors?" Aduni asked from her seat near the front. "Because our analysis included overhead costs, benefit values, and regional market adjustments, and we still found significant disparities." And, Tunde added, "We would welcome the opportunity to see the company's analysis that shows our current compensation is fair. Transparency would help us understand your perspective." Chief Adebayo's expression showed the strain of a man trying to explain why clear water is actually muddy. The company's compensation philosophy is complex, and frankly, these public discussions of individual financial matters are inappropriate and potentially harmful to workplace morale. "But Chief," Bissy said with genuine curiosity, "if our compensation is fair, wouldn't transparency strengthen morale by confirming that fairness?" The logic was inescapable, and Chief Adebayo's inability to answer it spoke louder than any words could have. The meeting ended in uncomfortable silence, with workers filing out like people leaving a funeral, mourning not the death of a person, but the death of illusions they had cherished. The end, when it came, was both sudden as lightning and inevitable as the changing seasons. Like fruit that has ripened beyond its time, the situation could no longer hold its current form. It began with a choice that Chief Adebayo made in the darkness of his own fear. Rather than face the truth of his workers' legitimate demands, he chose the path of the desperate predator. He began terminating the employment of those who had dared to speak. Kwame was first, called into a meeting on a Tuesday morning that felt heavy with destiny. "We've decided to restructure your position," Chief Adebayo said, his voice carrying the false regret of a crocodile mourning its prey. "Unfortunately, your role is no longer sustainable in our current economic environment." But Chief Adebayo had miscalculated, like a hunter who underestimates the intelligence of his quarry. He thought removing the ringleaders would scatter the rest. Instead, it galvanized them. By noon, word of Kwame's termination had spread through the office like wildfire. By evening, half the workforce had submitted their resignations. By the following week, the company's most productive departments were operating with skeleton crews. The customers noticed first. Projects that had once flowed smoothly now struggled. Quality that had been consistent became erratic. The very revenue stream that Chief Adebayo had protected through worker exploitation began to dry up like a river in drought. Within a month, the company's leadership, those who sat above Chief Adebayo in the hierarchy, began asking difficult questions. When they discovered the truth about the systematic underpayment, the manipulation tactics, and the recent exodus of talent, their response was swift as justice delayed too long. Chief Adebayo was transitioned to new opportunities, corporate language for the ancient practice of casting out those who violate the sacred trust of leadership. But this story, Children of the Earth, is not truly about Chief Adebayo or even about Kwame and his companions. It is about something larger, more enduring, more powerful than any single workplace or individual struggle. It is about the secret that once revealed can never be hidden again. Kwame found new work within a month, work that valued his contributions appropriately and transparently. Aduni became a leader in her new company, determined to create the honest workplace culture she had longed for. Tunde started his own consulting business, helping other workers understand their true worth. But more importantly, they carried the secret with them wherever they went, like seeds scattered by the wind to take root in new soil. At family gatherings, they shared the wisdom they had learned. In their new workplaces, they taught colleagues to recognize the difference between genuine care and manipulative control. On social platforms, they wrote about their experiences, helping countless others see their own situations more clearly. The secret spread like ripples from a stone cast into still water. The system that keeps you grateful for less than you deserve is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. And with that understanding came power. The power to recognize manipulation disguised as care, the power to demand fair treatment without guilt, the power to value oneself appropriately regardless of others' willingness to acknowledge that value. Listen well, children of all lands, for this story belongs not just to office workers in glass towers, but to all who labor under others' authority. The secret lives wherever someone in power seeks to maintain that power through the systematic devaluation of those they lead. It lives in relationships where one partner gives little while demanding endless gratitude. It lives in governments that provide basic services while expecting eternal appreciation. It lives wherever genuine care is mimicked to exploit those who yearn for authentic connection. But now you know the secret, and knowledge once gained transforms everything it touches. When someone speaks to you of being like family while treating you worse than strangers, you will remember this story. When someone asks for your loyalty while showing none in return, you will hear these words. When someone makes you feel selfish for asking for fairness, you will know the truth. The fire burns bright in every corner of the earth tonight, carried by all who have learned to see clearly. The secret has been told. The wisdom has been shared. The pattern has been revealed. Your worth is not determined by another's willingness to recognize it. Your value does not depend on someone else's validation. Your dignity is not a gift that others bestow. It is a birthright that others can only choose to honor or dishonor. And those who dishonor it? They reveal themselves through their dishonor like shadows that define the shape of light. The ancestors smile tonight, for another generation has learned to distinguish between the wolf and the shepherd, between the protector and the predator, between those who serve the community and those who would devour it. The secret is yours now, passed from one generation to the next like precious beads on an unbroken string. Guard it well, share it freely, and remember always, you are valuable because the earth made you valuable. You deserve fair treatment because fairness is the foundation of all true community. And no one, no matter how skilled their words, how warm their smile, how often they speak of family and gratitude, has the right to convince you otherwise. The fire burns bright, the secret lives, the truth endures. What you do with this knowledge is your choice. But choose wisely, for the ancestors are watching, and they are proud.